Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Halos and Heroes back at it. Today's video is going to be a little different. This is the Karen Faith How to Talk to the Worst Parts of Yourself TED Talk. Now, if you're wondering why I'm bringing you a TED Talk, it's because this is the video that really started my journey into discovering myself. And helped with a lot of struggles that I was having up to that point. And there's one other one that I'm going to be bringing you later this week that I also find invaluable. Hopefully these don't get blocked, but just a forewarning, there are topics of ideation and I'll be making commentary throughout regarding how specific parts of this have affected me personally. So without further delay, this is Karen Faith, How to Talk to the Worst Parts of Yourself.
It isn't true what they say, that you can't love anyone until you love yourself. Have you heard that? Some people say you have to learn to love yourself before you can love anybody else. But it's not true. I loved everybody before I loved myself. Love doesn't care which way you come or what state you're in when you get here. Love welcomes everyone unconditionally. Oddly,
Love should welcome everyone unconditionally. If there are conditions on the love, you are with the wrong person.
so do focus group moderators, which is how and why I learned to do it. If you've never been a part of a focus group, you're missing a really special cultural experience. So in every focus group, there's a range of characters, right? There's always a shy one and a chatty one, a grumpy one that doesn't want to do any of the exercises, and a very excited mom with a notebook who wants to get an A+ in all of the exercises.
Being the perfectionist, I had to learn the difference, and the way that I learned it was progress over perfection. As long as what you are doing with your recovery, your whatever it is, your mental health, if you're making progress, that's all that matters. Because then, if you make a mistake, that's all it is. If you are a perfectionist, then when you make a mistake, it's because you personally are a failure, and that's not true. I had to learn that the hard way. I am not a failure. I am a human who makes mistakes.
There's a student who lied on the intake because they need the money, and a dad full of jokes who can't read the room. And usually,
I am that dad. I make really dumb dad jokes. Did you hear about the dwarf that escaped from prison? Yeah. Once he got over the wall, he became a little condescending.
there's one ex-military guy who keeps staring at the two-way mirror suspiciously. It's a situation where a group of people that may not otherwise ever meet have the chance to share their perspectives. And it's my job, as the moderator, to make sure that they all get heard. Now, it's not quite a classroom, it's not group therapy, and while the community feel has some elements of holiness, probably no one would call it a spiritual experience. I mean, no one else. Because moderating rooms of strange and difficult voices is what taught me to welcome all the strange and difficult parts of myself. No kidding. I start every morning meditation with the same opener I use as a focus group moderator. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Your input is valued. I'm going to hear from each of you. I'll give you all the chance to speak. Just do your best to be completely present, honest, and try to make any requests reasonable.
Now, that is a very, very, very important point. Whether you are discussing this with other people or just within yourself. These last 10 seconds of what she just said builds the entire premise for what she's about to say. And I would highly recommend incorporating that mantra into your morning routine. You'll see why, but I can tell you from personal experience, again, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a doctor, I don't have any letters next to my name. As someone who has incorporated this mantra into their daily routine myself, I can tell you it works for me.
So, I don't know about you, but there are a lot of me in here, in the mind of Karen Faith. I'm not referring to psychiatric illness specifically, but I don't exclude that. My mind has plenty of quirks, but what I have to share is for anyone with an inner dialogue, though I admit it's especially for those of us with a really noisy one. So I noticed some time ago that I was arguing with myself, and then I wondered, if I didn't agree with me, who is I and who is me in that scenario? And it turned out that there are quite a few of me. There's a really sentimental, emotional me, and an intellectual, analytical me. Those two argue a lot. There's a me who loves being on stage. There's another one who's pretty shaky at the moment. Some of us, at this time I include you, some of us regard these as feelings or thoughts, and maybe we've done our personal homework accepting that we can have conflicting feelings at the same time. We can be excited about a new job and also dread going back to work.
See, the movie Upside Down covers this really well, although there's mixed reviews, mixed feelings on the movie. It's kind of a glimpse of what she's talking about, visual representation. And yeah, I mean, there's times where, like when I was in rehab, there were times where I was excited for an upcoming meeting and yet apprehensive at the same time because of experiences that I had had, or my own personal inner dialogue, and overcoming that and becoming comfortable in that discomfort is very eye-opening.
We can be tired and want to stay up. We can adore someone who also annoys us. We can love someone who has badly betrayed us. We know this. And when we're honest and rational, we can see that these are common experiences. That we're not crazy to both love and hate camping. It does me no harm to embrace that I feel both ways about it. But what about the thought that I'm worthless? That I don't belong here? That the mistakes I've made are unforgivable? That the bad things that happened in my life were my fault? Those thoughts are just as real as the rest of them.
And that's very valid. That's a very valid argument. As we'll get into, and something I had to learn in Smart Recovery, for instance, we talk about disarm, which is a tool in the Smart Handbook, which page 38, if anyone's curious. Let's see. So disarm is the destructive images and self-talk awareness and refusal method. She goes about it a little differently, but it's not wrong. I'm just saying that there is actually a tool specifically for learning how to disarm those thoughts in Smart Recovery as well.
But they're harder to live with. And they send many of us to therapy, or to yoga, or the nearest bar, which more or less describes my daily commute for many years. Because I wanted to silence those thoughts completely. And let me tell you, I tried. I have done every kind of therapy I have ever heard of. I have done talk therapy, energy healing, body work, hypnotherapy, soul retrieval, the tapping stuff, the thing with the lights. I did 7 kinds of yoga. I drank the special tea with the shaman in the forest. I admit I did pass on the acupuncture they do with live honeybees, but people do that.
Acupuncture with live honeybees. I have never heard of that. Still never heard of that after watching this video. I was scared to research it, honestly. I don't know that that would be something I would ever attempt, but I guess there's something for everyone.
Suffice to say, I tried, and still sometimes when I was alone, I would hear myself shouting, "Shut up," or worse, to my own mind. In my work as a people researcher, it's my job to practice empathy with strangers, to receive everything I can about their world in order to understand them as deeply as possible. Now, it's noteworthy that I found this career at a temp job writing meeting notes when my supervisor noticed that I wasn't just paraphrasing conversation, I was recording body language, microexpressions, tonal shifts, specific verb choices.
See, I agree with that too. Conversation isn't just about what we say. It's about how we say it. It's about how we react or respond to what is being said. It's a key component, and I think it's very valuable.
What neither of us knew then is that the qualities which made me seem skillful were the symptoms of complex post-traumatic stress, the most reasonable results of an appalling upbringing, and a fact I share, not to set me apart from you, but to welcome you in here with me. Everyone in this room has walked through something difficult in order to be here. And I want you to know that whatever path you've taken to get through it is honorable. Whether you never talk about it, whether you write bad poetry about it, whether you make tons of money prosecuting it, or if you just hit the gym like a champ to sweat it out of your body, there is truly no wrong way. There are some ways that cause other problems. You know the ones. I've done some of those.
And those, unfortunately, are what landed me in rehab to begin with. Substance abuse, toxic codependency, relationship issues in general. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of negative ways to work through things when you don't know the right ways, or you are unwilling to embrace the right ways because the wrong ways, or the unproductive, I like the terms unproductive or productive. The unproductive ways of coping are very self-defeating in the long run. The instant gratification wears off, and then we're just left with ourselves. My second weekend in rehab, I ended up with an abscessed tooth. Now, normally, it's a sick cycle, but what I would do is if I started having tooth pain, I would smoke substance to numb myself. And then by the time that the substance wore off, the tooth pain had subsided by then, and I didn't have to deal with it anymore. Unfortunately, in rehab, I couldn't do that. I couldn't use that solution anymore. So I sat there from Friday night until Tuesday morning, having to not climb the walls or grab a pair of pliers and tear the tooth out myself, which I was almost tempted to do, I'll be honest. But I had to breathe and go for walks and bust out my camera and do anything I could to take my mind off of it. But that was my first experience with having to cope with something that I had previously been unproductive in coping with.
I still do some of those. And I don't judge those either. Because gifts and curses are buy one, get one. And mine were no exception. My early life gave me heaps of shame and a splintered sense of self, hence all the different me's. But it also gave me super antennas for the emotions of others. This hypervigilance made me a certified mess of a person, but a damn near wizard-level observer. So I got to work. In the last 20 years, I've shadowed people in their homes, at their jobs, while they shop and drive and go on dates. I ask them to be honest and vulnerable with me, and to do this, I practice something that I call unconditional welcome, which is like a researcher's neutrality, but a little extra. The day I discovered it, I was sitting in the living room of a research subject. She was a very unpleasant woman, if I'm honest, feeding French fries to an infant as she snapped at me that she would never have her children vaccinated, not even to protect them from polio, because she didn't know it was in those shots. Now, never mind that she said this an inch of ash deep into a Virginia Slim, right? I was judging her. I know. I'm not proud of it.
In those situations, it's very tempting to automatically judge and assume what it is that's going through that person's mind, what they're thinking about, what they're feeling. But active listening is all about hearing that person out without that judgment present. And it's a very difficult tool to learn because it is ingrained in us to judge people. And so to be able to pull yourself back out of that situation and just focus on what they're saying, maybe watch their body language. Are they tense? Are they defensive? Because maybe part of them feels like they are wrong, but maybe they're coming at you like this for confirmation of their values, of their beliefs. And if you're not in a position to dispel their beliefs or values, it's best to just not say anything.
But at least one of me is a jerk. I needed to connect with her, and I didn't want to. I didn't like her. I didn't respect her. I didn't want to spend a single moment with her, and the project required that I spend hours, and that I use that time to get to know her, what she values, what she believes, where she finds strength. Researcher neutrality was unavailable to me at the time, so I had to get out the big guns. I called up my New Age visualization skills, and I took a deep breath, secondhand smoke and all, and I imagined that my breath was inflating a shiny soap bubble filled with unconditional welcome. Not tolerance, not even compassion, total welcome, as is, no comments, no notes. And as I inflated the bubble, it became big enough to contain my whole body, and then hers. And in that moment, I saw a mother feeding her baby in a world that she didn't trust.
And that's a valuable lesson. When I am able to step back from my belief, my perception of her reality, and put myself in her position and say, okay, if this were me and this were my situation, how would I handle it? How would I view it if I were her? What is it that's going through my head as her? What concerns would I have? Why is it that I feel this way? And it's very important to remember that not everyone has the same thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, but it is their reality. It is their value system, either that they've been raised on or that they believe wholeheartedly in, but it is their reality.
I told her that I could see that she cared about protecting her son, and I asked her if she got that from her parents. And then we had a conversation, and I learned about her. I learned why she was afraid and angry, and how she fought through that fear to make a family. When I welcomed this woman unconditionally, I saw her more clearly, but I also loved her instantly. We have been told too often that love is hard. It's not. Love is what happens when we stop trying to figure out who deserves it. It's right there when we stop trying to figure out who deserves it and we welcome someone, anyone, exactly as they are in the moment. It would be 2 more years before I learned to do this with all the parts of myself.
See, it's very easy to approach a situation guarded, with conditions, with reservations. It's very difficult to approach any situation with open arms and an open heart. But it's what we deserve as people. We deserve to be heard, to feel cared about. I don't say what I say at the end of every single one of my videos because it's something to say. I say it because I mean it. If no one else tells you during your day that they care, that you are loved, that you're not alone, I hope that when you watch these videos, you hear me say it and mean it, because I do.
But it started just as simply. A part of me had become very chatty, a part that was afraid and angry, whiny, demanding, unreasonable, and relentless. She told me that we were never going to get better. She wanted out of here. I asked her what I could do. She only told me she wanted to die, over and over and over and over. I begged her to shut up, and she did not. Finally, after weeks of harassment, whether out of exhaustion or epiphany, instead of shouting back, I took a deep breath. I became my own moderator. I said out loud, in a voice that surprised me, "Thank you for sharing. I'm going to remind you of our agreement to be honest and reasonable." And she answered me, that voice. Now,
That is why I said in the beginning to pay attention, and that's a horrible space to, there we go. That's why I said in the very, very beginning, listen to what she was saying there, because when you incorporate that mantra every single morning into your life, when any single one of those intrusive and invasive thoughts start occurring, you can remind yourself, hey, we agreed that you would be heard as long as you were reasonable and rational, when you weren't being argumentative. I'm hearing you, but let's chill, because then when you repress a thought, when you push a thought down, when you push a feeling down, all it does is come back stronger. Comes back stronger, comes back louder, it comes back more intrusive and invasive than the last time. So if you simply say, I hear you, I understand what you're saying, thank you for sharing, you can stop those thoughts a lot easier. And the more you stand up to those type of thoughts, acknowledge them, thank them for voicing their opinion, and then move on, over time it becomes routine to do so. I can start to pick out which thoughts are rational and reasonable. I can start to pick out which thoughts are intrusive or invasive or impulsive. And that helps me.
And reasonable. And she answered me, that voice. Now, don't get spooked. This is all just thinking happening. But the part of me asking and the part answering did in fact seem like different parts. She told me that she was in a lot of pain, and I told her, I know. And I promise you I'm going to take care of you, but I need you to get on board. I will listen to you, but I will not obey you. And as clearly as I'm speaking to you now, she said, okay. And then we started to talk. As I continued the dialogue with myself, I found more of me, more voices with more points of view, some of them more fun than others. And the imagined landscape of my mind began to look a lot like a focus group. This round table of wildly mixed characters and one moderator keeping some kind of order with honesty, boundaries, kindness, and most importantly, gratitude. I thank myself for their contributions, no matter how bonkers or twisted they may seem.
That is, okay, so she mentioned boundaries. One thing I learned is that there are two types of boundaries. There are firm boundaries and there are porous boundaries. Firm boundaries are the ones where, like for me, because I'm in recovery, people come to my door, they meet me out in town or whatever, and they're like, hey, you want to go smoke some whatever? And I can say, no, I don't do that anymore. That's a firm boundary. Somebody knocks on my door, I can say, no, you're not coming in. That's a firm boundary. Porous boundaries are when maybe I'm friends with a person, but they're still active where I'm in recovery. So I agree to meet them for lunch, or I agree to meet them in public, but I don't invite them over. I don't invite them in. I don't allow their active use to become part of my recovery life. And that's a big difference. The other thing I want to point out is realistic expectations. If somebody shows up at my door at 2 a.m, it's not realistic for me to believe that they are there for any other purpose than whatever. But most times people that show up at your door unannounced, unexpected at 2 o'clock in the morning are not there for anything positive, anything productive. So it would be unrealistic for me to expect that they would be coming in for something productive at that point. So what I do when I set a realistic expectation for myself is I say, okay, anyone that knocks on my door after 10 p.m. or anyone that knocks on my door that isn't invited or expected, I don't answer the door. Now, there are exceptions, but realistically speaking, those expectations are limited. If it's my neighbor, for instance, and they need help with something, or it's, a friend of mine that's in distress that needs to talk, okay, I can handle that to a degree, but I have to set that realistic expectation for myself and that boundary for myself that, yeah, they may want to come in and talk, but if they come in and they talk and then they start using, I've got to boot them. That's it. I cannot have them there doing that.
Because we're all me. I think of my fragmented self less like a broken mirror and more like a prism. We're a full spectrum. Today, there isn't a voice in my head that I don't welcome, and while some of us are occasionally unreasonable, we're not mean. Even my whiny, shamey voice is trying to help in her weird way. But when I ask her to be clear and kind, she tells me exactly what I need to know, what she needs to feel better and what she'd like for me to learn. But just like the scared and angry mother, she only does this when I accept her exactly as she is in the moment. So while my openings for self-talk and focus groups sound almost identical, the closings are a little different. At the round table, I would hand out parking validation and remind everyone to sign for their cash. But when I'm with all of me, I say, I love you. Thank you for helping me see what you see, which is why this practice is so useful for all of us here with our different perspectives, inside and outside of one another. If we can receive one another with the curiosity and welcome of a focus group moderator, perhaps we can do a better job of love. Because it is not true what they say, that you can't love anyone until you love yourself. Love is a house you can crawl in through a window. If you can't start with yourself, start with the person next to you right now, whether you know them or not. All you have to do is let them be here. It's easy, isn't it? Wherever they've been, whatever they're carrying, whatever talents they have or don't have, whatever mistakes they've made, can you just welcome them here?
Valuable advice. One thing that I learned, I speak for myself as an I statement, not for any narcissistic purpose, not for any self-aggrandizing, but humbling, humility. See, the reason that I didn't like that person in recovery is because of their raw, rough around the edges sense of humor. But wait, that was part of me that I didn't like. So it had nothing to do with that person. That person was simply a personification of a part of me that I didn't like. And so in order to welcome that person, I had to forgive myself for that. And then I got this person over here who's the know-it-all, and they have an answer for everything. And guess what? That was a part of me that I didn't like either. So if I'm going to welcome that person into my world, I've got to take into consideration that, hey, that's a part of you that you don't like. Work on it. Make it better. Fix it. Do what you can to make progress in that area. And I did my best. I made mistakes along the way, but overall it helped make me a better person, and that's what matters.
Can you welcome you? We're here right now like this. We're beautiful and strange and complicated and scared and sometimes kind of horrible. But all of us are worthy of welcome. And everyone that you show unconditional welcome may show you a part of yourself to love. You are welcome. Thank you.
Well, I hope you guys found that a valuable tool. I'm going to intersperse some of these within the music that I do. From here on out, I think they're valuable. I think they're great advice. I hope that YouTube does not block them. But we'll see what happens. But as always, guys, this has been Halos and Heroes. I love you. I care. You are not alone.